It's already midday. We'll just go back to the sessions, and I'm very delighted to be able to present this panel that is going to last for only 25 minutes because you will all understand how important risk management is. At the heart of board of directors, unprecedented volatility, the more interconnected world, and the need to organize risk is bigger and bigger. On top of this, regulation that requires sustainable models has stressed the need at the board of directors to have professionals who channel integral and transversal management of risks associated to their organization. Let's talk about the present and the future of this organization with three prominent experts as independent advisors. In order to do so, we are pleased to have Fernando Caballero de la Sen, the Managing Director of Risk Consulting, as well as an independent director at Zoltec, Maria Montserrat, Trapé, Viladomat. She's a lawyer, and she is an independent director of CRITERIACAIXA. And on screen, beloved Laura, thank you for connecting from your home. And she was an independent director of BANKIA, VISCOFAN, and ACERINOX. I grant you the floor. Thank you, Alicia. I am pleased to be at AGERS once again. I feel myself at home after all these years working for this association. In this panel, we talked about how others see us from the risk supervision in an environment, the crazy world Alicia mentioned with high uncertainty, volatility, and interconnected risks. This could be a headline in Twitter. And things that were unprecedented, ideal for the AGERS training sessions. We talk about cyber, we now talk about supply chain, natural catastrophes. Everything was a theory, a utopia. And alongside with the fact that if we analyze data like a survey now on more than half of the risk that worry organizations do not have a clearly insured solution. This is much more than a transaction or insurance policies. It is a much more complex science. Well, having said that, we're going to start the session. The first question I wanted to ask you, Alejandro has shared an article, The Lack of Standardization in Risk Management. And we were very much surprised about it because when we talk about corporate governance, there are clearly set up functions: head of audit, head of internal audit, head of human resources. Laura, I don't know if you want to open up this debate from that angle. What is your view on corporate governance in the field of risk management? Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be able to participate in your conference. And I see it is a very interesting and inspiring to us all, for you and also to the guests. The question that you've asked me is very relevant. After the past month events, nobody questions the importance of integral strategic risk management. And I think the content and the the shape and the risk management needs to be redefined in these first 20 years of the 21st century. And I think this is very important because it allows you to clearly position internally and externally. That's why I'm very much defending that this position should be Chief Risk Officer or Head of Risks, because it is very important to name it as such, and how this is positioned internally and externally in the company, in the organization. I believe it needs to be part of the steering committee, very much involved in the definition of the strategy. And that's why I personally don't like to talk about risk management. Um, I think this is rather obsolete, that does not reflect the importance, strategic importance, and operational importance in the P&L of the company. And moreover, revisiting the contents, the scope has to be aligned with the review of the resources alongside with the reality, complexity, and challenges of the company. So I'd like to name this position CRO or Head of Risks. In heavily regulated industries, Solvency II in banking is like a critical governance function. So the reflection is how can we extrapolate this best practice to the other industries? So your reflections, your thoughts. Good morning, everyone. It is the first time I'm pleased to be able to share these thoughts with all of you at this conference, and thank you very much for welcoming me. Listening to a lot of thought, I'm going to probably share the same thoughts. In line with the previous speaker, risk management is changing. The value is increasing because this is not only about purchasing, delegating, it's about anticipating, assessing. And in my previous life, I was a partner by KPMG. So I can't hide from you that a company which is constantly embedded in corporations, risks of all kinds, to begin with the reputational risk, regulatory risk, operational risk, risk management was a critical function, and this was a culture that was embedded in the day-to-day. A Fernando. Yo me incorporé después de una larga vida en el sector público. I joined after a long life in the public industry, and this surprised me very much. So, because I hadn't received a proper explanation, it's the only thing that they forgot to explain. You live this directly, and in the past few years, I've also seen a change in culture. This partner, risk management partner, was that individual who could stop anything. For this to be the case, you need to empower the function with the necessary empowerment. As Laura said, in substance, resources means end position. And I am sure I may not have the answer to your question, Fernando, how to convey this reality, which in some cases and in some companies is lived in other situations. Yeah, I think that AGERS there, we talk about standardizing the function, and I think this is very important. By reading this program and the rules of everyone, it is very difficult to find similar heads or titles. And if you go to another finance forum or internal audit forum, and the rules have different, similar namings. But this is the evolution that we have enjoyed. Risk management in the past, where less things happen as opposed to what we have seen now. My wife was telling me at the supermarket, when I still believe and I see the masks on the supermarket, I still don't believe what's going on. We really need to discuss the resilience, the adaptation capability, and despite everything, human beings go ahead. And when you talk about risk management, how we've seen this in this world where nothing happened with the local companies, where everything ended up within your, you know, boundaries, and the evolution, the world 10, 15 years ago, whereas the world that we live now. So can we begin with this? Yes, well, allow me to just present this at the core of the board of directors, which is the backbone of this talk. So you see risk control and the evolution of risk control in a very similar area compared to other areas. It is an intense change, a rapid change, but I would say also a change in scope and approach. And you may disagree with me, but at the moment, the feeling that we have is that the society, our different stakeholders, do not allow us to have a deficiency in risk control. Although I do think they are far more understanding with the calamities when this is not perceived. And from that onwards, I also believe that these can be part of all the risks. And if we think about the 20th century, the tranquility, the peace of mind, risk management from an intuition point of view, reactive point of view. And now we have this risk control based upon other models that are very sophisticated, which are incredible with a lot of information. And from that point of view onwards, from the board's point of view, when these models exceed that use, those boundaries, I think they do lose value because the board is the ultimate supervisor of risk management of the company. And I say we also have many other tasks and many other functions and responsibilities. We must be capable of integrating it all. So, what do we value the most? Because we're not experts. Risk management that we see is measured with different KPIs that are simplistic, that are materialized and objective and measurable. That we seem to think that it allows us to draw a comparison among different periods. Because at the end of the day, this simplicity, when it's really solid and we see what's behind an enormous toilsome work and this complexity that gives us the perception of absence of control, which is precisely what at a board of directors we try to avoid. The Once we become practical, risk management is about taking the best decisions with information ahead of you. From the bottom, you can just discuss, impact probability, but with from the broad angle, I think we get the broader perspective, and this is risk, uncertainty, risk, and helping the board to take relevant decisions with the laws and the existing environment, the supervision at the board. Yeah, yeah. Therefore, these models, synthesis, summary, KPIs that we understand, is truly what we think is assessed from the board. Laura, how can we stress this risk function from your experience? We often talk about risk at the board of directors, not so much as we discuss ESG and other criteria. Well, allow me to share with you how this view has evolved, the view from the board of directors in the last 12 years. I joined as an independent director to a company in 2008. 22 years ago, a lot of things have happened, including the level of responsibility that the directors have and the importance of a good corporate governance that were requested not only by authorities but also by the different stakeholders. And in order to carry out our task with solvency at the board of directors, in order to become supervisors of the company or the listed company or the company from an executive role, we need to be empowered with tools which allow us to be able to take quality decisions, to draw, create scenarios, and to do our work with solvency. For me, there are two functions that are very important where directors are driven by: internal audit and the CRO. If these functions are solvent, robust, credible, with a lot of internal and external reputation, gives us the confidence, which is fundamental to help us carry out our endeavor, because we're not involved in the day-to-day of companies, but we, with certain limited information and in temporary spaces, we need to take very important decisions in the short to long run. So that's why we need robust chief risk officers that often appear at the audit committees and the board of directors. And I always require in all board meetings to have at least twice a year the chief risk officer to present his views, to convey to the board of directors what is his view, risk mapping, the proposals, KPIs, in order to truly obtain such control level. So we have the necessary simple tools, as Montserrat said, alongside with the contents, and something that allows us to diligently carry out our work as board members. So the function is key. That's why we need to position it properly and adequately. And it is also very important to be close to the board, to the steerco, the executive committee, and also the different board committees. Such an interesting reflection. My view in this regard, oftentimes we talked about personal egos, to be as close as possible to the board. Do you need to leave your egos aside? Yes. And I think we all know that it is a very strategic function, but it needs to have direct and free access to the information and to be independent, just like internal audit. And with those rules of the game, we can start depicting this org chart. And reporting the board often is very, very ideal, because if it is requested by regulation, it's far better. The ISO standards associate risk management to the SP of the company, the strategy of the company. You need to set up this function so it has have the importance it deserves. An area of improvement is that you need to study a lot. You need to be fully trained. You need to be equipped with the resources. It's not only presented to the board of directors that the policies have increased by 10%. This has an alternative complexity to help the higher ranges to take these decisions. And I am a part of this. But this must be a critical function and to often report to the board. And I also believe, based upon what Laura said, and in line with your reflection, empowerment needs to be the answer. It can't be a body that is completely alien, that does not give value, because this is one of the other expressions we've heard this morning, and a powerful risk management that can also help the board and perhaps other members in general of a company to help them with other realities. We have talked about the periodical control, presence with a pre-established agenda, adequate timing. But you have mentioned that we are in a change environment, vulnerability, where the reality anticipates things. And we have mentioned this many times. Well, the COVID-19 presented, it wasn't on a risk mapping for sure, but already during the pandemic, we can ask ourselves different questions. Have we adequately anticipated the crisis that ensued and provoked on the value chains? Have we? Inflation in which we are living. So, having a powerful department must also help us in those risks that are not part of the periodical control, but they can also help the board in this function that does correspond as well, anticipating in order to ensure the future of our companies. Interesting reflection. But the pandemic as well and the big bet. This was number 70, the likelihood of this happening. So, how we undermine certain risk, and this is also happening with the supply chain. In ESG, there are many concerns. And this is another topic that must be there, and it is critical and fundamental to understand and know the trends of the outcoming world. So the black swan is becoming grayish and even more white. It is the worst that can happen to a risk manager, having a risk that they haven't been able to identify based on the human weakness, not being able to guess the future because there's more and more data. We have a lot of black swans or grayish swans because many in the pandemic claimed, like Bill Gates, that we were just not assessing it properly. So they are undervalued, and this is an interesting topic. Anything else to add, Laura? I agree with both reflections, and this drives to the importance, strategic importance, and the adequate positioning of risks. And this is something that has evolved very importantly, and we need to involve this in the redefinition of the companies. I think we're all reviewing the business model because the demand model has changed. The supply one is in crisis and transformation, and the definition, the consumers' habits are changing. And I believe we need to ensure that the strategic risk management is very much involved in the definition of the strategic plan so we can assess this potential risk, so we can have a more broader view and in a systematic way where we can be agile in managing our companies in these uncertain environments, which are the new reality we need to manage. And this is not going to change in the short to mid run. How would we finish now?
With our audience, what inspiring message would we leave them with, all these risk managers following the conversation here or remotely? Well, it is difficult to give an inspiring message, really. I like an expression, a saying, or a term rather, intelligent optimism. And I think it reflects somewhat of this resilience we were talking about. Laura was saying this. The culture of stability has disappeared. We need to swiftly integrate in the culture of adaptability. And in this complex world, I don't know whether it is inspiring or not, but it helps me always to think about how you cannot put common sense to a side, but rather demand it, use it, value it from the people who work with you, because the minute you abandon common sense, you go into a world of complexities where all we manage to do is lose this intelligent optimism. This is why, in the end, the traditional or common values that we've always had and the back to basics is important. Stopping for a second and going back to the values that have never failed, the value of effort, commitment, being close, resilience, being able to listen. I don't know whether this is inspiring, but this is what has helped me in these last 18 months. Thank you, Monse. How about you, Laura? A final reflection from you too. I would link my reflections to how in these times of uncertainties, as we've been taught in all business schools, we see many opportunities appearing. This is a time of great opportunities, and the 21st edition of the EDEMA barometer shows it. This edema barometer, which has been recently published this spring, this was the results published were the ones from the survey carried out in 2020, and they have a trust index where they measure the citizens' trust on corporations, managers, governments, NGOs, and the media. It is a study in 30 countries with a significant number of surveys, of questionnaires, so it has significance. And the results are interesting. This year, for the first time, this 21st edition shows that society declares openly they trust companies and managers more than governments, NGOs, or the media. This is a mind-blowing change in society. This is a tremendous opportunity for managers. And so my message is linked to this great opportunity we cannot miss out on. We must use this trust the society is given us to see as managers or non-executive managers in boards, such as myself and Monse. We must make the most of this opportunity and see how we can use this trust that the citizens of the world have given us to become benchmarks and reference points of a society that is transforming, is really upside down. All of us have been deeply transformed, and we do have a role that we demand. I feel managers, corporations, companies, we demand this social recognition. And for the first time, we are getting it. We are being given this role. So we must not miss out on this. As I was saying, we must all do our work as best we can with that intelligent optimism that Monse alluded to, in order to make the world a better place altogether, and chief risk officers are going to play a significant role in that. Thank you so much, Laura, Monse. It's been a pleasure to have you with us in this conference, this AGERS conference, and you're now part of the family, and we invite you to come to the next one, of course. One final message. We've talked about a crazy world with maximum uncertainty, and I feel both society and top management need risk managers as a strategic critical function moving forward. And so the headline for Twitter would be, it is the time, and it has been the time for quite some time, for risk management. Okay, so thank you, and thank you for being at home with us again. Thank you so much, everybody.